Oh,
I decided I didn't hate myself enough.
Okay, that would be 100 times worse.
I didn't do it.
Well, yeah.
I just got back. I was, and it's another doctor's appointment.
Would you like to tell the world what happened?
Oh yeah. It turns out the gonorrhea has gone straight to my brain.
Good, great. That's just wonderful. That's just wonderful. Okay.
All right, we're all set there.
Yeah. All right, it's the Brad and Britt cast. We're glad you're with us. We're live in the 1:30 hour on Wednesday, the day after election month in America. And a little program note on the next Brad and Britt cast, which will be live on Thursday, we will have with us our old friend Park Pewterbaugh. Great rock and roll writer, educator, smart, funny, great guy, best in the business. And he just got back from Los Angeles, where last weekend was the official Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony. I guess they move it around now, kind of like the ACC tournament.
That's right. Okay? And that was the one that Dolly Parton said, please don't induct me, but they did anyway.
Right. So Cleveland is the Greensboro of Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremonies. You thought it was always going to be there, but not anymore.
It's the Cleveland is the Greensboro of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ceremonies because nobody wants to go there. They bitch about it when they have to go there.
Right.
Yeah,
you can't get a hotel room in Greensboro, and you can't get a hotel room in Cleveland. You can't get a direct flight to Greensboro from anywhere. You can't get one to Cleveland.
I'll tell you what,
so that explains that. So they had that in Los Angeles last weekend.
You can't get a corned beef sandwich in L.A. like you can at Slyman's, though.
That's true. Corned beef may be as good or better in Cleveland these days. So and where is Greensboro in that discussion? Nowhere.
Zero. We're gonna have Park back on to talk about stuff. He's a bon vivant, a raconteur, a Renaissance man, as it was.
Exactly. And we've asked him to heavily drink before he joins us because we're gonna get all liquored up next time.
Believe it.
Okay, here we go. Something I noticed Tuesday night as election results started to come in, and it got later into the night, and that's where you see them jump around and show candidates declaring victory or standing up there and saying it's over, I lost, and the rest. And the concession speeches to me are way more interesting than the acceptance speeches. And I've noticed a trend, and maybe it's just anecdotal, maybe I'm just not hearing it. But back in my era, back in the day, whenever that was, concession speeches used to start off with the candidate right up front saying, I just made a phone call to blah, 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 congratulated them and said they have my full support. And then the supporters of the candidate who just announced that he made the concession, they would boo, and it would kind of be funny. And then no, don't do that. That's what we did. All right. And on. That doesn't happen anymore. Not only is the art, the decency of concession been lost, and I just can't imagine how that came to be in this country the last few years, that candidates, even if they're as anti-Trump or Democratic, it doesn't seem to be much of a part of it. Although when Sherry Beasley of North Carolina stood up in front of her supporters, she said that about a minute or so in, which is fine as long as you say the words, and the people in the room were okay. They understood, and on she went. So she showed a shred of decency. Good for her. We like that. And here is Tim Ryan, who I think it's fair to say you and I are highly disappointed that he did not beat the carpetbagging, interloping fraud J.D. Vance, one of Donald Trump's triumphs on Tuesday night. If he's going to be out there bragging about how he dominated the country, which I'm sure he will. It doesn't matter that most of the people he supported didn't get through, but he's going to point to J.D. Vance and, sadly, Ted Budd in North Carolina. We'll get to Ted Budd in a minute. But listen to Tim Ryan, who, I don't know, I think you thought this too. He was a great candidate. He knew the right buttons to push in Ohio, along with, and maybe you've heard this, I haven't gotten an answer on this. Where was Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown, a Democrat who's been in office, I think he's in his 4th or 5th term, who's had that same blue-collar appeal across the board and keeps winning as the only person in Ohio that wins statewide races? Governors, no. Secretaries of it, no. Sherrod Brown is. So you would have thought that they would have been Bobbsey twins going across the state together. That if you voted for me, you should vote for Tim Ryan, because this is what we do. We look out for the working people of Ohio. We try to get industry, all the things that you would normally. So that one surprises me.
I think the National Party has a lot to answer for just in general with that Ohio race. I think they let down Tim Ryan. I think there was a lack of coordination and just assistance and money and everything. Yeah. And I think there needs to be kind of some sort of acknowledgement and some sort of accountability with that.
Yeah. All right. So here's Tim Ryan on Tuesday night addressing his folks in the concession speech. And just, I'll set you up ahead of time. This is so classy.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
You cannot believe what you're about to hear. Here we go.
That this country, we have too much hate. We have too much anger. There's way too much fear. There's way too much division. And that we need more love. We need more compassion. We need more concern for each other. It's important things. We need forgiveness. We need grace. We need reconciliation. We do have to leave the age of stupidity behind us. And I have a privilege right now, a privilege, as someone who was the Democratic nominee. I have the privilege to concede this race to J.D. Vance, because the way this country operates is that when you lose an election, you concede. And you respect. Right? We can't have a system where if you win, it's a legitimate election, and if you lose, someone stole it. That
kind of get the idea there.
I've heard some bullshit in my life.
Wait a minute.
Holy shit.
A little rush. Wait, hang on. Were you listening into that?
Hold your penis in your hands and weep. Tim Ryan acting like a loser. Greetings and salutations across the fruited plain. 'Tis I, the all-powerful, all-fuzzy, all-feeling, all-everything, Maharishi, live from hell, listening to this pussy doing the feel-good plastic banana rock and roll bullshit as he holds it. You show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser.
Oh, that's
Spanky.
Wait a minute. Trump has never conceded the 2020 election.
Nor should he.
When I last checked, Doug Mastriano never called Josh Shapiro to concede a race that he lost by more than 10 points. Even Dr. Oz made the call. Dr. Oz, what did you think? You knew Dr. Oz pretty well, didn't you?
He's a fine man. There was some shenanigans. I hope they do some investigations there. I've come up with another one of my Little Rush classic nicknames. I was doing it well before Donaldus Magnus.
Really?
Tim Cryan there in Ohio.
Tim Cryan.
If this is a precursor, Ohio State is going to get their asses kicked by Michigan in what, 17 days? Something like that. If this is what Ohio does, folks, Michigan is going to destroy the Buckeyes this year.
You really had to go
regardless
there,
of-
didn't you? You had to go there.
Regardless of any wind, rain, barometric pressure, anything else you want to bring into the situation, if this is the kind of pussy behavior that gets applauded in the great state of Ohio, bleh, vomit.
Little Rush, you could almost carve out the state of Florida
Yes.
in what happened there compared to really the rest of the country. Irrespective of the final results in Arizona or Nevada or Georgia, it was a beatdown. It was a beatdown by Ron DeSantis. Do you have any new nicknames for DeSantis? Besides what was Ron DeSanctimonious?
They're not Ron DeSanctimonious.
I had one.
What do you got?
Ron DeShitface. I like that one. What do you think of that?
I helped, of course, pave the way when I moved to the sunny Southern Command in Florida, and now it's red. It's redder than it's ever been, folks. I mean, the state of Florida, it could not be redder.
Well, how did that happen?
Well, because of me. I was the one who paved the way. I made it cool. I made it fashionable. I made it something that everyone wanted to be a part of. And thank God we were able to get that. The Marco Rubio, Val Demings, that thing was called before Seinfeld was on. The Seinfeld rerun at 7:30 on the Fox affiliate there in Orlando. That shit was overdone. Dunzo. Sorry, bye. And then DeSantis wins by 500,000 votes, folks.
I think it was more than that. I think you went under.
DeSantis wins by a lot of votes, and we're kicking ass in Florida, folks.
Yeah,
Florida is going to be huge for a while. It's just amazing. Well, it's not the bath salts. It's not the. And by the way, another one of those virtue signaling deals in Tennessee. You saw that they finally outlawed slavery in Tennessee.
Oh, they finally got around to that.
Yeah,
did that bother you?
Well, I would just like to shout out the 20% of people, 20% who said that they'd like to keep slavery as a punishment in the Constitution of the volunteer state of Tennessee. So God bless the 1/5 of you who showed up and did the right thing at the polls yesterday.
Right.
God bless you.
Right. To keep America slaveholders and free states. It should be divided, right? Yeah.
The door should be open. I'm just saying it shouldn't be used, but I'm just saying, in case of emergency, they've got the thing. You go to the movie theater, you go to the doctor's office, it's in case of emergency, break glass. That's what that should be, folks.
Well, Little Rush, I don't want to get too deep into economics with you, but if wages get too high, if there's a wage price spiral that just can't be stemmed with higher interest rates or layoffs, the answer ultimately probably would be slavery, because that cuts wages for the capitalist.
Got to have it
for the owner. It really would help, because you get all the work done, and you don't have to worry about Social Security.
And we can blame it on Biden. We can say it's Biden's fault. He made wages too high. We had to go back to slavery.
Why am I conspiring with you? What am I doing? What am I doing here?
See what a talented broadcaster I am.
Yeah.
I was even able to persuade you.
You really got me.
I guess Carrie Lake, unfortunately, she is a loser, but still fuckable. So that's very unfortunate. They're still counting in Arizona. We don't know if Blake Masters is going to end up beating Mark Kelly.
Wasn't he about 5 points behind, though? That looks pretty hopeless.
Of course, we're seeing all the juxtapositioning. Me and my good friend Greg over there at USAWatchdog.com, we were watching those Maricopa County boxes. And there's a lot of bullshit going on there. Yeah. And then, of course, Nevada, folks. And we got a runoff in Georgia. So the Reverend Warnock not doing quite as well as he thought.
Well, do you know why there is the runoff system in Georgia? Are you familiar with the reason that?
Come close to me and I'll whisper it to you. It's a fucked up state. Okay. No, I don't know the real reason.
I'll tell you what, I will talk about that with Britt.
Okay, you talk about that with him.
Because I think it would upset you so much if you found out the real reason that all these
Yes.
years later, by the way, in the same year now that Tennessee finally struck slavery as an option. Was it in their constitution?
It
Is
was
that what they
still
did?
it was still codified as a possible punishment. And again, 20% of patriots stood up and said it should stay.
Yeah, yeah.
The
Well,
brave 20%. How about that Ted Budd? God damn, it's great to have him. I am so happy to have
I'll
him
bet.
coming to the United States Senate. We really didn't have enough brainless fucks in there, and I am just glad that we're going to have him in there. You don't have to worry about him trading stocks. He's just going to trade guns. I can't wait to have him. What a fantastic victory for white males across this incredible country. Ted fucking Budd, one of the greats, and we're delighted to have him.
All right, now we've gone all this time with an appearance with you, Little Rush. I think for the first time in many, many years where we have not said the words Donald Trump up until now. I'm going to mention them now because by most measures, he didn't have such a great night Tuesday night, which is interesting in and of itself, but because he's set up this dynamic where I think it's November 15th, that's next Tuesday, he says he's going to announce that he's running for president, which has at this point now, boy, I don't know if you've been reading down there. I know you get all the subscriptions from all the papers down there, but wow, they're starting to really turn on your friend and former neighbor, Donald Trump, kind of blaming him in a way.
Essentially, the Democratic narrative as they approach Donaldus Magnus. What happened was the Republican Party invited Donaldus Magnus into the house, into the apartment. They fed him full of Viagra, and he banged the Republican Party. And now the Republicans have to carry that thing to term. That's what they're going to say. They can't abort it now.
So there you go.
It's a tremendous thing for. Look, the media is going to paint this as a loss. We took control of the House. We were 2 for 2, I think, in knocking off black women that were running for the Senate. Huge victory. USA.
You were the first. Wait a second. You were the first person to single out that particular subdivision demographically of wins by Republicans Tuesday night. 2 black women, Val Demings in Florida and Sherry Beasley in North Carolina.
Batting 1,000. Batting 1,000. We took huge control. Florida is red as shit. DeSantis is red hot. There is no better time for Donaldus Magnus to announce he is running for another term. I can't wait, folks. They're going to have it on the big screen here in hell. And I will be there certainly in spirit looking up at my good friend Donaldus Magnus.
All right. Little Rush, great to talk to you. Your post-election analysis is second to none. You are still the best in the business, even if you are deader than anything.
God bless you and hubba hubba. Interesting analysis.
Yeah.
How did you approach it last night? Because I tried not to watch any coverage on like a TV until like 10:30.
I went till after 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
I went till after 9 o'clock because I was sitting there at the kitchen table discussing kitchen table issues with the wife on how to put food on the table with plenty of food. Probably a little bit too much on the table. Most Americans really do have that problem.
Yeah, it is. I can't make room in the fridge. That's a great problem to have, right?
Exactly. So I was sitting there with my little iPad. And here's one.
Yeah.
I have 2.
Well, look at you.
When I went and got a new one during the pandemic panic of you have to buy new electronic shit 2 years ago, I bought a new iPad. And I just thought, well, it's time to upgrade. And then it's only then where you can compare whether your new iPad is that much different than the one that's 3 or 4 years old. Because I was ready to throw this one. No, you know what? It still works. The battery runs down a little bit. I still keep it. What's the difference?
There's no reason not to.
Yeah. What? Oh, wait. I could get $40 for it from Best Buy. Thanks. So it was worth keeping. So
I was following on Twitter, and then I go over to some. I didn't see Kornacki at all. I understand he was really great again last night.
He was good. He was good, and I of course wanted to make sure that I wasn't losing my mind here, and I wanted to see what the depression level was on Fox.
Same.
It's very important.
Same.
And it was there. It was there. And when I saw that Mark Thiessen, who's just dreadful. They run his column locally here in the News and Record just to pretend that they're running conservative crap.
Yeah,
I think he was like George W. Bush's speech.
So let's talk about Mark Thiessen for a moment, because the thing that a lot of the media is taking out is they're taking out that clip of him going, God, this is just a referendum on the Republicans, and what a terrible day this is, and we suck. If we can't, have an alternative to the inflation and blah, 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 then we're terrible. Okay, well, that's one thing. But he said, as you probably saw, a lot of other bullshit pumping up the Republican Party throughout the course of the evening, including saying it was these Republicans in states like Florida and Texas that said, fuck you and your ovaries, that won. So that's what we need to do as a party, is fuck you and your ovaries and go balls out with it. That was part of what he said last night.
Now, how stupid is that on a night when protecting the right to choose an abortion went through in states like Kentucky?
Fucking
Kentucky. All right. In addition to, I think, Michigan and California. I ask this question now. If, based on what you and I and we all know about the, how should we say it, quirkiness of North Carolina, which I think actually does approach Arizona right now in unpredictability across the board.
Maybe.
If there was a referendum protecting the right of women to their own health care via abortion, and that no more legislation could be passed to restrict abortion, and that the kind of Roe v. Wade standard would apply here, and that's it. Do you think that North Carolina would join those lefty states like Kentucky and Kansas? Or do you think in this fucked up state right now, it could be demagogued the other direction?
Here's how that would work. And it was very much like that House resolution, HR 1 that was outlawing gay marriage? Was that what they called that thing? Remember, they did put it on the ballot as a referendum. Remember, they did it in the primary season. They didn't do it in the general election. They would try to do something like that. If they put that on the ballot during like November 2024, during a huge election, I think it would pass. But if they do it during a primary, when you have a limited number of hardcore assholes who come out and vote, I don't think it would pass.
Right. So here's what happened. And I know we're talking a little parochially here about North Carolina, but fortunately we are in a state that does get paid attention to these days. What happens in state houses and in courthouses is, of course, just as important as the marquee Senate races or governor's races. And in North Carolina, we are this close, and I have my fingers really close together. We are this close to becoming Wisconsin. And Wisconsin is this close to becoming Hungary, okay, or Russia, a one-party state. They're this close to it, okay? The Democratic governor in Wisconsin did get reelected.
Yeah, he's holding things together.
And that's true. But the Wisconsin legislature is either right up at the edge of or into supermajorities to overrule him on everything. And they've now changed the Wisconsin Supreme Court. It's now Republican controlled.
Yeah.
So they do everything. They gerrymander the shit out of that state. It's outrageous. They are going to be making the rules about elections and how they are run in Wisconsin. North Carolina, at this moment, after the election on Tuesday, now has a state Senate with a supermajority. And the House is really, really close. And for some crazy reason, North Carolina citizens decided that the I guess it was a 6-1 Democratic advantage in the Supreme Court. Then it went to, I think, 4-3.
Mm-hmm.
And last night, now it's a Republican majority.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Republican majority on the state Supreme Court. Just in a matter of about 6 years, it's switched over, and 2 more seats are up in 2 years, and they're both Democrats. So you could have like a 7-0 Supreme Court. So it may not matter that we have a Democratic governor for the next 2 years. They may be able to steamroll all kinds of crap about abortion and about tax and all the things that Republican wish lists include. If
you look a couple of states over from Wisconsin and you look at Michigan, a state that has a lot of stuff culturally in common with Wisconsin, they decided they went all blue, right? It was the blue governor. She got reelected, and then both houses for the first time in 40 years or something.
Yeah, I hate to play the game. What's the color of the University of Michigan? What's their slogan?
So I feel to your point, we're this close to being that to Wisconsin, and we're also this close to being the Michigan thing, because there's some problems in North Carolina. The Republican Party has some problems in North Carolina. They've been able to jack with stuff, and I do want to point out at this point, the Republicans would not have likely gained control of the U.S. House of Representatives had it not been for gerrymandering. That probably solely is going to account for the Republican majority, and still we were almost able to overcome that.
What is it? It's like 7-6 now.
Yeah.
It's, it used to be like 11-2.
Exactly.
So it is a lot better. And that goes to why nationally the Republicans they were unable to produce a red wave at all, really.
Well, the narrative that they fashioned for themselves as a party, which was crime is terrible right now. Joe Biden is allowing teachers to try to go ahead and cut the dicks off of your children at school. Price of gas is out of control, and he wants to drive it higher. This doddering fool doesn't know what he's doing. Inflation is going to go through the roof, and he doesn't have a solution for it. We do. That narrative didn't work. America did not buy that narrative, right? On the wholesale level. I'm not going to talk us into a loss as the Democratic Party. This was a win. This is a win. Now, is it sad that we lost 2 huge stars in Tim Ryan and Val Demings? They lost. Yeah, that's not great. And it sucks that we're probably going to lose control of the House of Representatives. But there was a lot to like here. And Joe Biden continues to be underrated and overperforming by everybody in the world.
I'm so glad you said that, because we've had this discussion about 12 times in the last 2 years. When he gets counted out, he doesn't know what's going on. He has no control over it. He's just sitting there, because if you read right-wing shit and you read right-wing blogs, they always talk about Joe Biden's handlers as if he's not in control of his own faculties, right? They always talk about that. And of course, it's just not true. And the numbers in this case, once again, not only do they not lie, but they tell a very, very wonderful truth that when the history books are written, and they're being written right now, not only will Joe Biden be given credit and all the credit in the world, along with James Clyburn of South Carolina, who really made the difference during the primaries in 2020, that he slayed the Donald Trump dragon on Election Day, I think. Now he beat Trump. He beat him soundly by 8 million popular votes, and a nice kind of electoral college victory that any presidential candidate would love to have. But then over the next 2 years, considering he had the thinnest majority in both houses of Congress that could ever imagine, needing to hold everybody together almost every time because Republicans were in unanimous opposition almost constantly. You got a lot of legislation passed, and in spite of the overhang of inflation and the pandemic, They powered through. This is what the history books are going to say in arrears, right? They're going to say that's what they are going to say.
Yeah,
and inflation really is not forever. I always like that line. Inflation isn't forever. Your shitty reputation is. When they would, I'm paraphrasing what Democrats would say on stage. And by the way, I never thought of this until recently. When all these debates were going on, one of the best zingers I think that was never used against Republicans, especially after what was a couple months ago, where Senator Rick Scott of Florida, who for some reason has some kind of leadership position in the Republican Senate hierarchy, put out this paper. I'm sure if it was a white paper, of course. You see what I did there?
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
It's good. It's a white paper.
And they went full third rail and talked about, quote, reforming Social Security and Medicare. And naturally, there is a reasonable discussion to have about that.
Yeah.
But that's not where they're coming from.
No.
Because they actually got to the point in that discussion or whatever that they were putting out there that Social Security would become just another program that would have a 5-year window, and it would get rediscussed every 5 years. Should we keep Social Security? Should we get rid of it?
No.
Should we cut the benefits or should we keep them? A cost of living increases? Fuck that. So if the Democrats were smarter, and they're not dumb, and they did well, I get that. I think they should have used the phrase, my opponent, Ted Budd, I'm Sherry Beasley, my opponent wants to defund Social Security.
Oh, yeah.
He wants to defund Medicare. They should have used the lightning word, the most powerful word of the last few years for Republicans: defund the police and shift it over. But the truth would be they really do want to defund Social Security. They really do want to defund Medicare. In the case of Medicare, that goes back about 65 years. In the case of Social Security, it goes back to the mid-1930s when there was a lot of opposition, and FDR had to do backflips to get that through during the New Deal years.
But it became wildly popular, and it has been for all of the decades since then. And the Republicans have tried to kick the shit out of it now for 6 or 7 decades.
The election is over, but the issue, of course, remains the same. It's still there, and Social Security does have this year in the early to mid 2030s where if something isn't done, something being, you have to cut benefits.
That's right.
You have to raise the age at which people start to collect them, or you have to raise of course, the Democratic plan is to take that cap on earnings. I think what is it, like 130,000? After 130,000, you don't get any money taken out of your paycheck.
Any extra. That's it.
Social Security.
That's
and the first step would be to put that up at 400,000. So people who make between 130 and 400,000, they would get taxed for Social Security, just like that first part of their paycheck gets. Would that destroy America? Would rich people have to? And by the way, they're not necessarily billionaires.
It's a job killer. It's a job killer, Brad.
Right. Yeah, people would lose their jobs over that. So I think that is going to be a great debate. Maybe this would be the time to have it. Maybe when you have almost a split House of Representatives and a very
okay
close,
with
this is the time.
I've said to you before, I'm okay with means testing. Let's have a discussion about means testing. I don't do it tomorrow, but you can do it 20 years from now or what. I don't care. I'm fine with all that.
You can't wait 20 years. You gotta do it tomorrow.
That's fine. We can have that. I mean, I don't know when you actually start the means testing. I don't mean you don't just like start, January 1st of 2024 or whatever.
No, Britt, remember you fuck over the next generation. You don't fuck with people now.
As I am a member of AARP, I do understand that now. It's funny that you bring up Social Security and Medicare because the first guy that they signed up for Medicare was Harry Truman. LBJ brought him up to the White House and he's filling out the shit and everything. And that was one of the Mark Thiessen things. This is again in context of Joe Biden. He goes,
This guy had the lowest approval rating since Harry Truman. Well, Mark, what was the historic lesson of Harry Truman? What was the historic lesson of Harry Truman? He was underestimated greatly. He ends up winning a term in his own right. And as history went on, he's been appreciated more and more and more as time has gone on, correct?
Right. Well, as just an unsophisticated haberdasher from Missouri, I love that word. It's always associated with Harry Truman. Yeah, you're right. By the way, it was a question on Jeopardy. I don't know, it was last night or the night before. They wanted to know the exact quote of the newspaper in Chicago in 1948. And somebody knew, Dewey beats Truman.
Dewey
right?
defeats Truman is what it said.
Yeah.
And there's an extra gleam in his eye because the Chicago Tribune had been kicking Harry Truman's ass on its editorial pages.
Yeah.
It became so. What do you think now? After the good times are over and the Democrats stop celebrating, there need to be some very serious lessons going forward.
There's nothing to. I don't think this is a celebration kind of night.
Oh, I think it is. I think to have everything going against the Democratic Party the way they did, and to come out, this is
Britt. You know what? This. I think this is more equivalent to when you're watching the NFL playoffs and a team wins in the first round. Well, okay, that's a bad example because for some reason, no matter what game it is, they have to act like idiots, put on goggles, and spray champagne at each other like they did win the Super Bowl. Okay, but let's just pretend for a second that they really don't do that. And what they'll always say is, "This was great. We're glad we did it, but that was yesterday. We've got next week's game to look forward to." And that's really how the
lessons
have to look.
The lessons have to be, and I heard some Republicans saying this, the Democrats were better organized in many parts of the country than the Republicans were.
We don't live in one of those places.
No,
we do not live in one of those places.
If we could take that energy from one of those places and put it here and maybe in Ohio and maybe a little in Florida, we could do well.
This really bugs the shit out of me because I was looking at the list. In fact, I have it here. The list of places that were visited in the last 10 days by Barack Obama: Nevada, New Hampshire, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Florida, on and on it goes. He was everywhere except where? Here.
Yeah.
Okay. And we talked about this how many months ago? Why isn't the Senate race in North Carolina getting any attention? As if it was some kind of blowout runaway, not even worth talking about, as if it was one of these incumbents who's going to win re-election by 20 points. And it was never that. And Barack Obama never came here. Now, don't tell me that if he would have come here and held a humongoid rally in Raleigh, or even in a smaller town outside of Raleigh, with Sherry Beasley all the way, that would not have made a difference in turnout. I think it would have. I think it would have helped a lot. Would it have made 3 or 4 point? Probably not. But this is just absurd because the results are the results. And Tim Ryan lost by as many, if not more, points than Sherry Beasley did in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And he was there with Tim Ryan. Mm-hmm. So I think that was a big.
Well, that again, the national party, that's a takeaway. The national party needs to get its shit together. They really need to kind of make sure that the resources go where the resources are needed. You saw the exit polling that young people really carried this election for the Democrats. It was the Generation Z voters. That needs to be addressed. And those people going forward need to be energized and they need to feel included. You need to find thought leaders in those particular tribes and you need to get them out there and going and give them what they need, the tools to organize and the tools to motivate. Because I think that's another huge election from this midterm. They don't give a shit that Joe Biden's in his 80s. Surprisingly enough, I know the Republicans say it all the time, but they just don't.
I promised while I was talking to Little Rush, I don't know if you heard me say this to him, that, and I see so many holes in the coverage on television. It's so empty. It's so devoid of context. It's so pathetic. And to me, and you can't watch everything, but I have yet to hear anybody on any network at any time explain why in Georgia, we get these runoff elections after close. Everywhere else, if someone gets 49.7 and the other person gets 48.6, the 49.7 wins the fucking election, right?
Right.
But only in Georgia do you have to get to 50%, or
In
we're going to have
in the NBA, if you come within 3, they don't play overtime. You know, when the clock strikes 0 and you're 3 points down, you go home. The team that was ahead wins.
So here's the explanation. And I know you're going to be shocked about this. This is all racism. During the first half of the 20th century, Georgia had a system called the county unit system, which was kind of like an electoral college at the county level. So the rural voters in Georgia got disproportionate power, just the same way in a presidential election that shitty small population rural states like Wyoming and the Dakotas disproportionately get more sway in the electoral college than California or New York do. So they had the same idea in Georgia, and this would diminish the ability of black voters in cities like Atlanta to dominate. So they struck this down in 1962. Think about what was going on in the country in 1962. That is the absolute height of the civil rights movement of that era. So, and then this was a 14th Amendment kind of case, equal protection clause. So what did Georgia do? They came up with this bullshit runoff scheme, which already existed apparently in a lot of the South, not much anymore. And it was first started, guess where? Right here in the Carolinas.
Oh, good times.
In the 1800s. So the idea is that this prevented blacks from voting as a block together to push a candidate, probably a liberal. And this would split them up and force this runoff crap over and over and over again. That was the idea, and it's still in place. It is no more fair, has no more place in today's world than what happened in Tennessee when they finally had to get rid of slavery still being an optional employment idea for
optional employment idea. You need to go to Indeed, Indeed.com.
Right.
Speaking of racist shit that will drive you nuts, I don't think you've seen this, but somebody put this up. If you show the map from 1990, Jesse Helms versus Harvey Gantt, for Jesse Helms' Senate seat, and you lay it over the Sherry Beasley and Ted Budd map from yesterday,
right?
The counties that supported Sherry Beasley and Harvey Gantt look exactly the same, and the counties that supported Ted Budd and Jesse Helms look exactly the same. I mean, the maps look strikingly similar.
I think that you could pick almost any map from any Senate race going back to 1990 because we know what it looks like. And this is all over the country. You know that. If you look at Ohio, every statewide race has Cincinnati, Cleveland, Columbus, Dayton, Toledo, blue, and then the rest of the state's red. And it's the same here. You know, Raleigh, Greensboro, Winston-Salem, Asheville, Mecklenburg County, Wilmington, blue, rest of the state red. It's always been that way. It's just always been that way because the real Americans live away from the cities, as you know, and must be catered to. So
are you
same in every city?
Has the president actually spoken on the election results yet? Has Joe Biden spoken?
Apparently not, or we would have seen it. They're saying that he
I'm sure he's going to strike the right note, saying, you know, I think the election results show that their voters are unsatisfied with both parties, and we need to work together for solutions. Right? That's the statement that he needs to make. Correct?
Something like that.
He doesn't need to come out and say, fuck Lauren Boebert. You and I can say that. That's something you and I can say. And haha, bitch, go home. That's something that you and I can say. He doesn't need to say
victory.
that.
She's gone, but Marjorie Taylor Greene won, 70-30. By the way, she's the congresswoman from Deliverenceville, Georgia.
That's it. Yeah. That's all we got.
Yeah.
We're back on Thursday to wrap up
Park
your week.
Pewterball. Park Pewterball. We'll
Park
talk-
Pewterball will be here
talk
with us.
music.
Good times.